Hey, Steven, how's it going?
Good, yeah, good to meet you, mate.
Likewise, likewise. How's everything going over there where you're at right now with the weather and all that stuff?
It's a bit crap, got to be honest. Do you know what? I love the hot weather, and unfortunately, we don't get much of it in the UK. So I'm happy for about 4 weeks a year, I'd
Oh,
say.
wow.
Yeah, so I joined the police in '91. I suppose for me, police work hasn't changed, but fundamentally what the police do hasn't changed. What has changed, I suppose technology has changed immensely, but the politics around police is far more intense now than it used to be. I seem to feel like we were allowed to get on with our job,
Yeah.
and now with social media and everybody's got an opinion and everybody thinks they know better than us, that I just feel like people can't do the job anymore without being judged and just people getting in the way. That's how I feel now about the
Yeah,
police.
it's funny because we started around the same time. I started in '92, and it was a crazy time here in the US because that was around the time with the whole Rodney King incident and the riots in LA. And, going into police work at that time, it was scary because I didn't know what to expect. Obviously, there was a bigger dislike for the police because of what had happened in LA at that time. But coming into the profession then, it was scary for me because I had never experienced anything like it before, but it was also exciting. And, I served 20 years in the profession. And during those 20 years, the profession definitely changed, no doubt about it. Um, I personally could not, I don't think I could do, I've been retired now since 2013. And I personally do not believe that I have what it takes to do the job today because the job, like you said, the basic function of police work is the same, but there's so many other variables involved in it right now that, in my opinion, makes it less fun. And
I always say that policing in my day used to be fun,
yeah,
and but in a good way because like I was motivated by catching bad guys. That's what I like to do,
absolutely.
and that's why I went down the route of being a detective. So I would come on duty, I'd pick up my car keys, I'd go out, and it was like a game for me. I'm out there catching the bad guys.
Absolutely.
Some days I do, some days I didn't, but it was that feeling of sort of stepping out and not knowing what the day holds. But I was allowed to do that. It felt like I was allowed to do my
Yeah.
job. Um, and now, with the paperwork, with the pressures, with lack of resource, I mean, so I've got two older children who are in the police. My daughter's a detective, does kind of more, she does proactive work. So she does surveillance and all that kind
Okay.
of stuff. And my boy's in uniform, so he's on the streets. And I just I feel sorry for them. They don't get to have that fun that I had
Yeah.
and enjoy what you do. And I'm sad that that's almost taken away from
hmm
them.
I totally get it because, like you said, back then we didn't have to deal with everyone having a cell phone camera. We didn't wear cameras at the time. And it's not that we were doing anything wrong. It's just that it allowed you to be more of a human instead of a robot and worry about the responses that you had to make to people because it was being recorded, and a perfect example. The other day, I had to go to my old department because once a year I have to go in to shoot to qualify, and the department has turned over so much. There's probably maybe 10% of the people there that I know now. Um, but when I walked in, the young lady that was working the front desk, which was one of the duties details that I worked right before I retired, she before she even says anything, she turns a camera towards me and she hits record. And I started laughing because I thought it was funny. I'm like, really? They have you recording up here at the desk? And, and she's telling me everything. And I was like, wow, times have changed. And one of the old lieutenants that I used to work with who is still working, she comes out and she and I are talking. And she starts telling me about what we're talking about now, how things have changed, and I was her training officer when she started about 15, 16 years ago. And, even then, so she had a chance to see both sides of the profession, what it was and what it is now. And she said the same thing. She does not like it now. And, she was just giving me the examples of just the cameras. Most guys go out, do their job, and they don't, you're not out there to get in trouble. But guys have been disciplined for simple things that really aren't a big deal. But because they're on camera, now people are making a big deal about it. And she gave me the example of someone made a traffic stop. And during the conversation, one of the officers said to the driver who had some warrants and other things out for his arrest, he made a comment about, I believe there was a gun in the car also that they saw. And he made the comment that if you move, I'm going to light you up. How many times have you said that if there's a gun sitting there, you want to let this person know that you're serious, do not move. He got written up for that.
Do you know what? It's sad actually that I'm hearing, it's almost like a reflection of the conversations I hear in the UK and you're over in the States, that it's sad that it's going that way. I think what happens is society end up with the police force that they not necessarily they want, but they deserve in here. So if you're dealing with the most violent criminals in our society, you can't deal with them like you're on the customer service desk at an airport where you have to be yes sir, no sir, and these people are horrible.
Yeah.
But if you speak to them in a way that goes outside of what would be considered like the usual sort of customer service conversation, you're going to find yourself getting disciplined.
Absolutely.
But hold on. I'm dealing with someone that would shoot me in your instance, and you're saying I can't even use a particular word like lay you up. I mean, where's the balance there? Where's the balance?
Right. And
do you know what I mean?
In my opinion, that causes officers to be more of a, what's the word I'm looking for? More, I don't want to say cautious, or more apprehensive in doing their job, which can cause them to get hurt. Because there are certain people that you deal with in this profession. You have to talk to them in a certain way in order to get your point across to them.
100%. And you learn that, don't you? So when you go out day one, what I see with these new police officers that come out, they're like robots. You can't do that. But after a while, your personality comes out, and you learn that some people you have to speak to them like this. Like you've got a judge or a politician or someone important on this end, and you've got the worst in society on the other, and you learn on that scale how to talk to people.
Absolutely.
And if you go in too lightly on these people, they're going to think, well, this person's weak. I can then impose myself on them. So you're putting yourself in that position where actually I'm putting myself in danger by coming across meek and mild to this person who's an absolute lunatic.
Absolutely.
Whereas what I should be doing is saying, well, in my judgment call, in my experience, I'm going to come up here because I know that's what they're going to respect and answer to, as opposed to come down here. Do you know what I mean? And they're taking that away, aren't they?
And I think that people in society that are just everyday citizens that don't have interactions with the police, are just out going about their lives and being productive citizens in society, they don't understand that when you are a police officer and you deal with a certain element of society, that does come across as a weakness in that particular segment's eyes. If you do come across really meek like that, because now they know the game, they know how to take advantage of that and how to poke at you and things like that. And I think that's where a lot of officers get in trouble. But you said it, over time, once you're out there, you start to get your voice, you start to feel more confident about yourself and your ability to do the job. And that's when you become the real police, as we like to say. It takes a good 5 years to get to that point, but eventually if you're a halfway decent officer, you will get there, and
I always use this analogy, like being a police officer is like putting on a coat. And as soon as you put this coat on, you get powers that nobody else has got
Yes.
in terms of stopping, arresting, whatever.
Yes.
And it takes a while to be comfortable in that coat because it's something you've never worn before. And those new officers that you see that are just started wearing it, they're the ones that are they're gonna upset the members of the public because they haven't got that balance. And also as well, if you're talking to some of these real lowlifes in society and you're calling them sir, and they're going to get more wound up by that. It's like, are you taking the mickey out of me here? Like, why are you talking to me like that? I'm not. So you have to find that balance, don't you?
Yeah, you absolutely
and
do.
That balance doesn't always. If you have a camera. Now, I've not got a problem with cameras. I started to use them just because I was leaving, and I think they stop a lot more because most of the complaints that we get are malicious. He said this, he said that, and you can play the camera back and you can say, well, actually, no, I didn't. This is the conversation that happened. But there are those times where sometimes somebody needs speaking to sternly in a certain way. Not. You don't have to be aggressive. You don't have to be rude, but you have to be assertive.
Absolutely.
And sometimes that doesn't always sound good taken in isolation on a camera, but you've got to be there in that particular situation where you're living it. Yeah. The person watching it on the camera isn't. And that's my fear is that, and you see it all the time on social media where there'll be a clip of, look, police brutality. And it'll be a 10-second clip of 4 police officers on top of someone, but you don't see the build up. You don't see that person's behavior. And that's my fear with cameras is that they can be taken out of context if you're not there living it, experiencing it of why those officers resorted to that force or whatever.
Yeah. It's funny being so many miles apart that the job is the same no matter where you go for the most part. You know, it sounds like the good is the good and the bad is the bad no matter where you are in the world in this profession. Being over in the UK, do you guys have to use deadly force a lot, or have you been involved in incidents where you've had to pull out your weapon? I know for me, when I was working, at least twice a week, my gun was coming out.
I never carried a gun in my 30 years. Never once.
Are you serious?
I've never fired one. Never fired one. Never carried a gun.
Really?
Never ever. Never ever. And you know what? I'm glad I didn't.
Wow.
I never felt in a position where I needed it. I spent 12 years investigating homicide, 3 years investigating terrorism, and I arrested a countless of these murderers and terrorists. And never once did I feel in a position, I feel like I need a gun. I think there's a different attitude in our criminals than your criminals, I think. That's what I'm picking up. Because for us, I never felt that they were in a position where it's me or them, that kind of thing. I've got to get out of here. I'm going to fight my way out. They don't have that attitude because all that's going to happen for most of them, they'll get arrested, go to a police station, get looked after by a solicitor, and probably end up coming out because there's lack of evidence. Because most people that get arrested, they've probably been arrested. If I arrest someone for murder, they've probably been arrested 3 or 4 times for it before and just walked out of the police station through lack of evidence.
Wow.
So there's a definite difference, I think, in our criminals. And I think if we started carrying guns, we might up the ante for them.
I think it's I'm sorry, not to cut you off, but I think it's more than just a difference in the criminals. I think it's a difference in our societies.
Yeah, 100%. 100%.
You know, and I mean, obviously it's no secret. Americans, we love our guns. There's no secret about it, you know, and that's both good and bad. I could not imagine doing this job without carrying one though. That is crazy to me.
Do you know what my best weapon was in any situation?
Oh, your mouth.
Was my mouth.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And I know the answer to that because I was a hostage negotiator. And it was funny because the SWAT team or the CERT team, whenever we would get a call out, they will always get pissed because I spent all this time talking while they're ready to go in and pound. And I always tried to tell them, this is my best weapon, my mouth, so I totally get that. But I can see not having to carry a gun, how that could really hone that in where you learn to de-escalate and do all those things. For us, it's, we have to de-escalate, but we always have that to fall back on. Now, do you guys carry other items such as mace or pepper spray or anything like that?
So this is the journey of my personal protective equipment. When I first joined, I had a piece of wood about a foot long in my pocket, a truncheon, and that was it.
Wow.
After about 6 years, we got CS spray.
Okay.
And that was it. I never got. They brought in tasers, but only for certain officers are trained. And firearms is you have to join a special unit to be carrying a firearm.
Wow.
So when I was going into, you know what, I've got to be honest though, when I used to go and arrest people, I would usually be armed with a pen. I was like, it was just overconfidence or complacency. I don't know. But I just felt that if I got into a situation where I'm fighting something, I've done something wrong. And in my 30 years, I got assaulted once, and it was nothing to do. It wasn't even my fault. It was it was a situation that another police officer wound up a group of people. So maybe I was lucky.
Yeah,
I don't know, but yeah, I never felt like I wanted more than I had.
Wow, that's amazing to me. I mean, we had not only our sidearms, but we had a backup that we carried. We had a shotgun. We had an M16. We had a taser. We had CS spray. You know, it's overkill, you know, but I just can't imagine, you know, unfortunately, I was involved in an officer related shooting, and it was a situation where a couple was out celebrating their anniversary and they're traveling home on the freeway, and they get into a traffic altercation with some gentleman on the freeway, and this gentleman started shooting at him. And, you know, the heat pulls off the freeway behind them, and where they pulled off the freeway, there just happened to be a sergeant there stopped at the traffic signal, at the red traffic signal, and they end up conducting a traffic stop on this person. Well, I was a couple of miles away when the run came out. And by the time I get there, they're conducting a felony stop, which is a tactic that, you know, we use here when we have potential violent criminals that's in a vehicle. And as I'm approaching, I could see that this gentleman had his foot on the brake. So I knew the car was not in gear. So I knew he was going to take off. And sure enough, he did. And I became the primary car in the pursuit. And for some reason, I think it was raining that night. It had just finished raining. So we were going about 80 miles an hour down this street. And the other patrol cars had to fall back because they couldn't see because there was so much water being kicked up from the speeds that we were traveling at. And as we crossed over, after about 2 miles into the pursuit, for some reason, the suspect just dropped down from about 80 to about 40 miles an hour. And when he did that, it allowed me to make intentional contact and use what's called a pit maneuver. And his car spun out and went into the median, and my car veered off and went opposite direction of his. And my car ended up stalling right across from his. But the front of his car was facing the rear of my car. And I was looking in my mirror, and I can see him revving. I could hear him revving the engine to come off of the median to try to ram my car. And when he did that, I jumped out. And as he was coming at me, I ended up firing 3 shots. And he turned to go northbound in the southbound lanes of traffic. And 2 of the rounds went through the door and hit him in the side. And he was traveling northbound into the oncoming traffic of patrol cars that was coming southbound. So long story short, he ends up turning into a parking lot. And once he got in there, it was over because they just played ping pong with him and they rammed him into all types of things. But I just couldn't imagine not having my sidearm with me that night, you know, knowing that this gentleman had literally just shot at 2 people and was trying to run me over. But I think you nailed it. It just goes back to the mentality of the 2 societies, and the criminals here are on a different level. I mean, there are some people here that are on a really different level, but you know, I worked a lot of different details while I was on the job. And you had mentioned that you worked as a detective. So did I. I spent 3 years in the detective bureau. How did you enjoy that part of the profession?
Well, as I said, when I first joined, it was about catching criminals. And for me, I always wanted to up the criminal I was catching. So you naturally get drawn to being a detective because you're going after the worst criminals. And then I got sort of, and then you end up at homicide like I did. And for me, once I did that, once it was actually when I got my first conviction at court, when I was there and the jury came back with a guilty verdict on when you've been through all that hardship of like with the family going with their grief, the investigation, going through the court trial where defence are throwing all sorts at you,
Mm-hmm.
to get the conviction at the end, that feeling was just like, I couldn't see myself doing anything else. So I spent the last 12 years of my career doing that. And I felt lucky. All that stuff that we were talking about where the job isn't as fun, where the politics and everything, I felt investigating murders sheltered from that because we had our own little world.
Yeah.
We had a murderer to investigate, and we could shut the rest out.
Absolutely.
And I would see it when I would go on sort of leadership courses or and places where other units were, and hearing their stories about how bad it was, and I felt privileged to that. So that when I left, I was glad. When I did my 30 years, I was ready to go, but that was more to do with you give so much over of your own life when you're investigating homicide, because you give up your social life, seeing your family, the long hours, lack of sleep, and there's only so much you can do that for, and you're like, I can't give any more. And I got to that stage after 30 years, and that was what I signed up to do, so I was mentally prepared to go. But for me, it was the best job. I never regretted joining the police, and I just loved being a detective, especially homicide.
Yeah, I like I said, I worked detective for 3 years, and I ended up leaving. That was in '95. I ended up leaving the department shortly after that for about 18 months because I left to start a business. So I didn't get to continue my position there in the detective bureau. But the time that I was there, I really enjoyed it. I didn't work. I worked a couple of homicides, but mostly I worked crimes against property, commercial property crimes, break-ins, and things like that. But you're absolutely right. To me, it's a position that I feel all police officers should have an opportunity to work, because I think it makes you a better officer because you see things from the other side, as opposed to just showing up, taking a report or what have you. You get to see the court system kind of behind the curtains. You get to find out what elements need to go into a report in order to present it to the prosecutor and things like that. So I think it's a position that all police officers should spend some time in doing.
I can't say how much I agree with you in this right? So when I first joined in '91, as uniform officers, you would take your own cases to court. Not the most serious cases, you'd hand them on to the detectives. But if it was criminal damage, a shoplifting, something along sort of that lower level, you would arrest, interview, prepare the case file, go to court. And it made you understand what needed to go in a statement, what you need, what evidence you needed to get from a witness, the level of evidence that you would need to get a conviction.
Mm-hmm.
And they stopped that. They took it all away, and they made the uniform officers hand their jobs on to another unit. So what you ended up with is those officers, the quality of evidence they were producing early on was so poor. So you spent so much time you had to go back and revisit the witness or go back to the scene. And because those officers didn't understand what was required of them, it was the worst decision that certainly in London that they ever made around the police, I think, is taking away that responsibility. And then what you saw is those officers that were then coming in to become detectives, they weren't as good as the ones before because they didn't have that grounding of going to court. And going to court is probably the best experience you can have, because when you make mistakes at court, you'll never repeat them. If you're stood there and you've messed up, you feel so stupid. I am never going to make that mistake again. That's what you learn. And if you haven't been there, if you're in court because of someone else's mistakes, that person isn't learning. You're taking it for them. And yeah, what you're saying just resonates so well with me.
Yeah, yeah. I'm going to go back for a second because you had mentioned both of your children are now in the profession. I have two girls. Neither one of them are in the profession. Actually, one is an attorney. But how did that make you feel when they wanted to get into the job?
So both of them wanted to do other things. My boy joined the army, and it wasn't for him, and then came out. And my daughter wanted to be a vet, but she didn't quite get the grades she needed, so she didn't do that. And both of them, when they said, I never encouraged either of them to say, "Why don't you? Why don't you?" But when they did, I was kind of proud, to be honest, because it's a profession I love. I've always enjoyed it, and I helped them. So I did all I could to get them in and support them since. And yeah, I'm proud of them. It's a profession I'm proud. I mean, it's hard at the moment because sometimes it's almost like you shouldn't be proud of the police because of the bad rep they get in the news, and you should almost be ashamed of the fact that you was an officer. But I'm not. I'm proud. I know the work that goes on day in, day out.
Yeah.
Of the good people that do the work, so I'm proud of them.
Yeah,
but there again, if my daughter said she wanted to be an attorney, I probably would have pushed her towards that.
It's just so funny to me talking to you, being from the UK, and like I say, the similarities, but also just the vast differences between our two worlds, even though we were in the same profession. And you had talked about this earlier in the politics and all that stuff that are now involved in the profession. And I'd take my old department as an example. The chief that we have there now is fantastic. He's perfect for today's world. Every time you go on social media, he's on there. He has the department doing different things. When I was working, Facebook didn't come out to 2007, something like that. That's when social media started. There was a young lady that I worked with. She actually got written up because she was at a scene. Don't ask me how this happened, but there was a goat on top of someone's house. Don't ask me how it got there. I don't. But she took a picture of it.
That sounds like a college prank or something.
But she took a picture of the goat and she posted it on social media, and she got written up for it.
What?
Yeah.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Why not?
But now everything is on social media. I mean, if you go to our department's website, it's all it is. They're posting every day about social media. And, we couldn't have tattoos or beards or facial hair or anything back then. And now guys and girls can have tattoos. They don't have to shave. It's just a whole different world.
Mohawk.
Yeah. Is that the same there?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah,
wow,
definitely 100%. I got a niece, and she went a different route. She didn't join the police, but she couldn't have done at the time because she had an initial tattoo behind her ear. So she couldn't have joined at that point.
Wow!
But now they've got them everywhere.
Yeah, it's just so funny how times have changed over time. I mean, these guys, I walk into the department and I'm looking at them, and I'm like, they look like they just got out of bed. Their beards are all scraggly and everything. And I'm like, that never would have flown back in my day. If you even came in there, your shoes aren't polished and all this stuff, you were getting in trouble. But it's just a sign of the times,
Yeah. If I'm honest, it doesn't bother me as long as that officer is good at the job. Yeah. If they're good at the job, yeah, then I can live with it. But if they look like that and they can't do the job, that's doubly worse.
I hear you. Man, listen, I really enjoyed this conversation. It was a blast speaking to you. And I'm still blown away that you guys don't carry guns.
I'd much rather not carry a gun than go in every car I ever stop thinking that the person in it might shoot me. And I never had that. I'd much rather live in, no offense, I'd much rather live in my world than yours.
Oh, I don't blame you one bit. Trust me. I do not blame you at all. I got to ask you though, are there a lot of guns in the UK in terms of just citizens?
So legally or illegally? Legally, we've got in the UK, we've got 500,000 people. We've got a firearm license, and that would be a shotgun or a rifle. You basically can't own a handgun. We had in Scotland in the early 90s, or mid 90s, we had a school shooting where about 20 kids or something got shot. Wow. And essentially handguns were banned in the UK.
Wow, that's
so it's shot, and it'll be for a sporting purpose or a farm or shooting or something like that. You can't have it for self-protection. That's not a right in the UK.
Again, man, you're blowing my mind. 500,000 people. I think there's that many people in Texas that carry guns. Stephen, again, man, I really enjoyed this conversation, man. I hope we get to do it again and continue this. Take care of yourself.
I feel we could talk for hours.
Oh, for sure.
We need to do it over a beer. That's what
there you go. There you go. I like that. I like that a lot. But listen, man, prayers to your kids. I hope they're safe out there. Hopefully they have a long, healthy, fun career like you had. And just take care of yourself and stay safe over there.
Thanks, mate. I really appreciate it. I really, really, really enjoyed talking to you. You take care, mate.
Likewise.